Good afternoon, everybody. Very happy to be here. And After the lunch session, I think he saved our day today, isn't it? With having a good session on the automation strategies. Uh, Currently, I'm working with Essar as a global capability center head. And our vision, obviously, for Essar is to ensure that we support the group in terms of creating a sustainable capability center. Just to talk about Essar first a little bit, I know it's a well-known brand, been around for 50 years, and yes, there has been various brands like Vodafone and Naira, which has been part of the Essar group. In 2005, there was EGFL that was formed as part of the Essar group to look at various four strategies that can be really integrated for creating more sustainable assets around. So these four energy, metals and mining, infrastructure and logistics, and technology and retail have been the four pillars that have been looked at in terms of the future for the Essar group. Currently, the GCC in this entire strategy is supporting the energy pillar, which talks about providing new environmentally beneficial source of energy in India and UK. Companies like Essar Oil UK are being created to ensure that we transform to become a global benchmark for green refineries. What Essar has done is they have invested in assets like Stanlow, which were part of BP, and those are being looked at how we can work efficiently, look at cost reductions, and creating a technology transformation strategy ahead. Metals and mining has been a very old portfolio for Essar, and we're talking about getting mining and steel plants being set up in Americas, Indonesia, India, and various other areas. Infrastructure and logistics is talking about the ports, looking at various, geographical locations in US and Europe. Technology and retail has brands like Black Box and Pluck, which are the new age kind of companies which have been set up under Essar. But like I said, the GCC strategy right now is to support energy, which is delivering greener energy solutions. I thought this slide would be nice to wake up everybody after lunch. So I'll pause and give you a few seconds to just take in the slide. It talks more in terms of movement from a global business services to integrated business services, which is the vision that we have set for the GCC for Essar. It starts from in terms of pre-COVID, where it was physical working required, you had to be in the office, moving to the virtual ways, and obviously there was a lot of emphasis at that point of time in terms of are you technologically ready to even move to a virtual model, and I think the GCCs did show a lot of resilience at that point of time to move to virtual modes and did it very beautifully. I remember pre-COVID I was part of Thomas Cook group, and we had set up the GCC there as well, which was looking after various operations like finance, HR, and ticketing processes. We had just implemented our first phase of RPA, around 15-20 processes in finance and operations were part of it. And one fine day we just got to know we cannot go to work. And obviously, thankfully we had our RPA which was implemented, and we could run our processes remotely during that pandemic time. And if you remember, there were a lot of issues happening on flights. There were flight cancellations due to pandemic, and there was a huge volume on refunds to be processed. Our RPA program took care of that. Even though our people could not go to the office, we had our reconciliations working fine, we had our refunds working fine, and it was really good in terms of getting the data also, or MIS that was created during the pandemic, which could help us look at what we could do further. So pre-pandemic, we saw the old world working and then moved to the virtual way of working. We're talking about now, due to digital transformations across, about how a GCC could actually have a hybrid model working of managed model services, and also creating that capacity within the captive centers and creating global hubs. We're talking about end-to-end processes being handled by the GCCs really. Before it was more in silos, or there were just basic transactions or processes that were being handled. But now we're talking about global hubs which could deliver skills like RPA, AI, workflow modeling around the globe and other geographies as well. Also, in terms of the talent that is available, if I talk from an SR standpoint, the whole idea of a GCC was not just about cost arbitrage, but also creating the capacity in skill set. Because in UK right now, we are facing a crunch of people who would actually be interested in working in this segment. And in India, we do have a lot of the workforce who is actually interested in working in green energy and oil and gas segment. So even the niche skills and talent that is available in India, right from segments like oil and gas, which we are in, to even technology deliverables, we feel that that's one space we can really help and support the Essar group at this point of time. Data engineering, machine learning, I think our friend Manoj did tap on how it is all going ahead. And that's where we feel a lot of the skill set available in India can support the vision for a group like Essar. So this really envisages a lot of elements that we talk about in terms of where this model is moving from business services to integrated business services, which is the way forward. I know a lot of discussions happen in the morning about metaverse and holacracy and futuristic aspects, but this is also a very important thing to look at in terms of how the current trends are moving towards. So the integrated business services that we're talking about is more moving closer to the business rather than being in silos. If you remember in the older GBS segments as well, you would have just parts of the finance process being done at the GBS and parts of it being done at the parent company or the head office. Here we are talking about the end-to-end ownership of, say, a P2P finance, HR, apart from employee development, being handled in the integrated business services model that we're talking about. So in Essar, particularly if I tell you, we are setting up a new company called Vertex in UK, which is supporting the green energy transformation. And as part of that setup, GCC is being considered as the overall strategy as well to ensure that we can provide support in technology, provide support in engineering, provide support in project management, provide support in advisory that we can provide as a technical support. So that has been looked at as end-to-end we can support in the integrated business services. We're talking about accelerating globalization with unified governance, which means the structure would move to having one global owner, a process owner, instead of having silos or a chain of commands only in the GBS and not reporting to the executive. So this will be a unified governance model which talks about a head global services reporting on to a CEO, and he bringing in the visibility in terms of the projects, in terms of the roadmaps of the end-to-end processes that are being managed by the integrated business services. Transforming to digitization, I think this is something which everybody is talking about. As part of the GBS process or as part of the integrated business services, this becomes a very important aspect. If you want to really provide efficiency, look at how you can provide value for the business, digitization is the way forward. RPA, machine learning, you can look at digital hubs that have been created for all the geographies in integrated business services, and the ownership again lies with the IBS to ensure the implementation, selection of the vendor and partners, and delivering what is expected for the business is being done. Hybrid delivery model, this is something which is an interesting concept that's coming up as well. As part of captive shared services, when we look at the processes that are moving to the shared services and moving closer to business, what we feel is that there could be some processes which can be given to a third party, a service provider, ones who can handle it at a cost-effective price and also in terms of the transformation that they can help us do. So there is a hybrid model that's coming up which talks about integrating service providers within the captive model, and that has been managed by the captive model itself, and also the responsibility and ownership of deliverables lie with that captive model. This is what I was referring to. Existing GBSs obviously have this kind of a structure which talks about reporting to the CFO or the Chief Procurement Officer if you have a procurement or a finance process sitting in a captive center. But moving to integrated business services, which is what the vision of the Essar group is right now, is to look at a global head of business services which will own the end-to-end processes and provide visibility and a roadmap in terms of transformation and also in terms of what value can be created. So that's a very interesting thing that's emerging now, and this is something which we are trying to work on as well. It may not happen for all the segments of the business that we're talking about, but for example, we have a team of advisors, senior members from the oil and gas industry who have been onboarded as part of our captive journey and who are providing technical and advisory services for setup, for contracts, for new projects even coming up around the globe. So that becomes like a consulting arm that you have within your system, which is available for technical support. So that is what we're talking about when it comes under the IBS, and the ownership lies with the captive services. What are we doing at Essar currently? We are growing upstream, which means we are moving away from just the transaction processing that is moving to the captive center in Mumbai. We are looking at segments which are very close to business, like engineering, trading, marketing and logistics, IST, which can actually be supported from the captives, and the ownership will lie with this center here. For Vertex example, we are looking at new projects under Vertex. We have not hired people maybe in Vertex in UK, but we will have a team in India who will start looking at the projects end to end. So that's a very interesting concept that's coming in for new setups as well. The strategy of a GCC is now ingrained in moving up the value chain rather than just being at a transaction level. And that's what we're talking about, the integrated business services model. We also, apart from support functions like I mentioned, finance, HR, definitely, but we're talking about, again, end-to-end ownership. P2P should be contracting. Can we look at even having a new social or new environment of vendors which can be really brought in the system? For example, when we're talking about what Stanglo or UK is doing currently, they have only European vendors as part of their entire system. We have not really explored vendors from Asia or partners, and that has also been one of the areas which can bring in the cost efficiencies at a contract level or procurement even for the refinery or at the asset that we're talking about. So we're not just talking about transaction processing or low-level work, but we're talking about end-to-end ownership on various business-related aspects as well. I talked about the advisory COE. This is a very interesting concept, and let me just dwell a little more in detail about this. So these gentlemen who have been onboarded in the system are people like ex-BPCL chairmen or people who have been in engineering, design or projects for 20 years, have a lot of experience and expertise and can review the contracts and what we are bidding for and provide technical support of how the costing, how sound the proposal is technical, and also in terms of getting a better hit ratio in acceptance of such contracts and proposals. So this is being used as an advisory for the overall hydrocarbon initiative that we're taking in UK and the other geographies as well. So that's a very interesting concept, I feel, where you have a consulting arm within your GCC available for your company. IT workflow deployment, I talked about, having a global digital team available, and that's what we are trying to build here. Our teams in GCC will be looking at the overall implementation at various geographies, having a standard operating model from an infrastructure IT point of view as well, and workflows. I was talking to somebody right now, and they were saying, you have multiple systems available and different processes being worked on these systems. How do you integrate and standardize? If you have functional leaders who are working in silos, that is going to happen. As part of Worldly, when I was looking at the shared services set up there, we wanted to get a P2P workflow implemented. But when we went to Europe, finance controller said, sorry, I don't have time, I'm not going to implement this. This is not going to be helpful for me, my current process is better. So how do you really ensure that everybody moves to a platform? Obviously, it is a lot of change management that is coming into play, but if the ownership lies at a central level, it becomes easier for implementation of such strategies as well. And that is what our vision from an SR standpoint is, to create an integrated delivery services for us. And IT is going to be one of a key aspect. We also are looking at areas like data analytics for the refinery. Interesting scenario again. What we are thinking of is a report comes out of the refinery system to tell us if there are any problems in any of the machinery in the refinery, right? And that gets checked by a team on the ground. We are saying, why can't we do this in India? Look at these reports. Look at any risk that can be flagged out earlier on, and we in fact have systems where a camera can look at if there is something that has happened there without even a person going there. So this kind of a process can be managed by a GCC center. We're moving very close to business, looking at certain risk areas as well, though you'll still have people on the ground looking at it, but can we do it efficiently, better, real time? Is the data that is being shared created, giving you that visibility in terms of what can be done on real time? So that's what we are looking at from an IT standpoint as well. RPA, machine learning, yes, very low hanging fruits, which can be implemented very much. And I feel as a country and also as people that are part of the GBS setup, we are more agile and adaptable to these kind of technologies. You know, when we talked about even implementing RPA in Thomas Cook, initially my counterparts abroad were more skeptical about it than the people in India. They said, no, we'll do this. You know, we did fail a little bit. We failed on certain processes, but finally the outcome of the RPA program was beautiful. You know, in the COVID time, it just saved a lot of our efforts in terms of maintaining the operations. So RPA and machine learning hub is what we want to create at the center, which is very much in progress. But definitely from a refinery standpoint, a lot of this work is already being done. Data analytics, I already talked about. Procurement, and this again, you know, creating an ecosystem of partners and vendors around this area in Asia to support our operations in UK. Is that a possibility? Can we really provide that kind of an assistance to finally impact the overall cost? Because margins is a big thing for any old refinery, and that's what we are trying to do. Cost arbitrage being first point, obviously, but in terms of creation of capacity, skill, and the technical know-how, and the best practices as well. We have so many seasoned people in the oil and gas segment who have done things differently, which can be really helpful for creation of value for a company like Essar Oil UK that we are really focusing on. Leveraging availability of experienced talent. Mentioned this, engineering, you talk about IST, marketing, logistics, trading, you know, people who are really aware of what's happening in the markets are willing to really put in that kind of an effort to ensure that the operations are running effectively. So we are going to be a hub for the Essar Oil UK, for the other businesses in energy to provide that kind of support and talent. The benefits expected, like all of you would be already aware, since I do assume that you come from a shared services background. These are some things which most of you would have worked on and experienced as well. I have also worked on a lot of these transformation projects and journeys, and I really feel that that's the kind of cost savings that you can really achieve. So our focus is going to be ensuring that obviously we get efficient processes, because many times we do feel that all the companies have good processes, have all documentations, are doing it in the right way, and as you start getting into details, you realize the basics are not there. So even in terms of consolidation and standardization, which is the first two important aspects of a GBS, even if you do that, you know, you're going to have a much better efficient process in that journey. 20-30% savings on operational cost, no-brainer. I think not just cost arbitrage, and here I know when you talk about an Indian setup, it becomes difficult to even talk about a cost arbitrage. But in terms of the value creation through the efficiencies that you can bring in, we do see 20-30% of operational costs that we can bring in. 30-40% savings is what we have seen on RPA and machine learning. Again, it depends on the maturity level of your processes and where it is. At times, even for a RPA to be successful, you need to have the processes right around. So the first few steps of, you know, ensuring the processes are documented, they're streamlined, and you have an excellence framework around will support your RPA and machine learning journey. Thomas Cook, when we led this RPA journey, the first few months we only spent in creating this processes right. Upstream fixing was done to ensure that the data flows right to us as well, because without that you cannot really implement RPA successfully. We had around 15-20 bots which were working on all the finance related aspects, right from reconciliations, processing refunds, to month-end reporting, MIS creation, cash applications. So even ticket matching and some operational processes that were being undertaken. So it was only successful because of the processes being right. So we do feel 30-40% savings through RPA machine learning implementation is very much possible, and everybody should explore that. If you fail first, it's okay, don't give up. It does work in the long run. And like I said, in the COVID times or the pandemic time, this is what helped us immensely. My refunds were getting processed on a timely basis. Customers were coming to us like crazy to get the refunds because there were flight cancellations. But because our bots were working 24 hours, we could actually process them in a decent timeline and accurately and get reports remotely. So that was a big one. 20-30% savings is what we are saying through right contracting on maintenance schedules. Like I said, going closer to business, right? So we're talking about scheduling. There's a lot of scheduling that happens at a plant like refinery, which has to be done in a timely manner. And how do you do the scheduling? Is it being done properly? The contracting, there are a lot of legacy contracts that are in place today, and we are trying to review that, bring in new partners. And as always, when there's a legacy involved, you will face resistance, which will be like, okay, they don't know what is happening at the refinery, or they will not be able to handle it. So along with change management, if we are able to bring in this scheduling pattern also in an appropriate manner, we're talking about another 20-30% savings. Example on even turnaround times, when a refinery shuts down and to get everything done, there's a metric of maybe best in class 30 or 31 days, and currently our metric in the UK could be 60 days. How do we reduce it to a 31 days? That's again going very closer to business, and that's what our GCC or Capability Center from Mumbai is, creating a capacity and capability to support the UK operations in a way. So that's what we are hoping to gain by creating a capability center. We are just 6-7 months old right now. We're trying to create our frameworks right, and when you create a GCC, obviously your frameworks in terms of what your organization structure, how is it going to interact with your counterparts or the parent company, how does the ownership responsibility lie. So we've been really working on that, and also hiring a lot of our COE leads which come from the industry. So that's what we are trying to strengthen our frameworks, so that we can scale up in terms of the journey that Essar wants to create for energy mapping in UK. So that's the slides from me in terms of sharing a little bit on our experience in Essar and what we are trying to do, and also looking at a model from business services to integrated delivery services, which we are moving towards, taking end-to-end ownership and responsibility and creating value. Thank you so much. Any questions? We can take it now.
You are into a diversified segments, like you're looking at energy, oil and mining, then maybe infrastructure.
Correct.
If you truly see your workforce is more of an unskilled laborers. They are on this site, away from the signal areas, or they are somewhere in the middle of the scene doing the refining works and all this. How are you looking at this digitization or automation to reach to that spot, maybe from a HR perspective, where I'm looking at is in and out of the timing or the labor or the productivity, if I truly see from the HR perspective. How are you looking into it? Because all the 4 segments, what you show are totally
very core, and yes, very laborious, like you rightfully mentioned. But even to run that, so we would not want to touch that at this point of time. What we are talking about, and even from the 4 segments that I talked about, we are focusing right now more on energy. We will move towards the other segments as we go forward. But since the strategy right now is focusing on energy for Essar, we want to really try to get a lot of initiative done there. But you're right, we will have to look at how do we create that efficiencies even at the labor level. And that comes to even parts like scheduling. Are we doing a scheduling right? Because if you're doing ad hoc scheduling, it's not really helping your people on the ground. Are you creating that kind of an environment where data is flowing seamlessly to them? We've seen examples where a report throws some kind of an anomaly and 100 people are running towards it. Do you need 100 people running towards it? How can we really create a better process where these kind of risks are highlighted in a better way? So I think it is first to start off in creating a process and getting that streamlined, and then take step by step. But right now we are looking at high-end and not at the site level as of now, but we will reach there as well. Yeah.
I was in the semiconductor and we had the manufacturing plant.
Correct.
And they used to have a separate dress code to get inside, and they are not a skilled
Correct.
labor.
Correct.
So getting attendance from them, or punching in or applying the leave on it, or they're 24/7. So they come in a grey shift.
Correct.
And they come in a general shift. So it was very challenging for me at that time. So I thought, let me get some answer from you.
Yes, it is challenging. We don't want to touch it right now, believe me. and it is a unionized area as well. But in terms of creating an environment around, for example, can we send few of our engineers on the ground there to see what's happening? Can we create that kind of technical expertise and report back? Because at times even getting data is very difficult. You don't get the data to even take those next steps.
Actionables also question.
Correct. So first is in terms of creating that capacity and capability from here, wherein we start entrenching our team members there, getting this information out, and basis that creating a roadmap which will help even reaching the lowest level. That's what our agenda is in the long run.
So maybe then I'll try to be in touch with you
Yes,
to know how you're doing at the ground level.
Definitely.
Because the highest unskilled labor of your workforce is more in that area.
Yes, and a lot of governance around compliance and
Unions, mandatory government norms,
yes,
a lot of
yes.
things will be there.
So then again, that also restricts us from getting involved in some areas. How do we build around it? How can we still be present in terms of giving that guidance? And that is the reason also why we've got the advisory board or the advisory COE that we're talking about. We have around 5 to 6 these advisors in our COE who actually support on technical know-how. So they will look at certain things that are happening at the refinery and say, can we do it in this way? Example again would be, we had some fault coming in and we would have had to shut the refinery for 10 days. One of our advisors sat on the VC, asked what the details around it, said, you don't need to do this, just fix it this way. Ask your partner to do it this way. And we did that. We didn't have to shut the refinery. We saved money there. So this is value creation. So now we're talking about going more closer to business rather than just being a transactional processing hub. And that is what a trend I am seeing in the GCC segment, So obviously we'll move towards metaverse and all the other fancy terms that we talked about. But this is about current in the next 1 or 2 years. How do we move to...
Issues also to manage there.
Correct.
Because they're very hard to get convinced there.
Absolutely. So we'll have to work around all of these things. But yes, there is a way around. We definitely
I'll
seem
be in
to...
touch with you
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You spoke about COE, right? So in terms of so our structure is more of right from designing and then controllership. I would say controllership is more of designing, make sure the compliance, everything, and then we have a transactional stuff, and then also system, digital, and data part of it.
Correct.
So is it the same way you guys are structured in terms of bringing all the kind of GPO for procurement or GPO for maybe system side, transaction side into your GCC model? Is it the same strategy?
Yeah, so for us, since we are in the journey of setting it up, we are utilizing all these aspects available to make it part of a blueprint. So how a GBS journey would be otherwise? You would bring in one process, second process, third process, stitch it together. It will still not be the full process, right? That's how normally a GBS will move. Now we're talking about that experience and expertise already available in this area with so much of skilled resources who are even technologically very advanced. They know how the process, what the process should be from a finance perspective, what digital theme will fit in. So what we've done is in our blueprint itself, we have said, okay, if Vertex, for example, like I mentioned, we want to set up some projects under Vertex, that entire team will first come under GCC. Instead of having it there, so we are ingraining this strategy at the root level, but where it is already present, right? Your question is where it is already present. It has to be again in terms of, yes, the roadmap is to get it completely to GCC and you have to have a buy-in at the very initial stages.
I think you guys are in the same journey. So from a GCC point of view, we drive for finance functions, we decide their digital roadmap from here in India.
Correct.
So that's the biggest thing from a shared services GPS to GCC, which is much more bigger than what we were used to, right? So
absolutely, and you should be able to do it for all the locations, not just your location, no?
Absolutely.
So that's calling you standardization and consolidation. Otherwise, you will never get the benefits of a GBS.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is what I have seen.
The role that we are doing is predominantly of the global role, and it's very exciting, I would say.
Absolutely, it is. And moving to IDS, I think that's the game changer again. You will have the complete ownership at your end, and you will be reporting to a CEO, suppose in finance, CEO, saying this is what we should be doing as a roadmap for finance, and nobody really intervenes in that.
Absolutely.
Because, like I said, part of my worldly experience, we had these 3 different platforms available, and we
Yeah.
didn't know why. Just because a finance controller in Europe said, I don't like this platform, or I'm not going to do this. So, till the time we don't get it under one umbrella, it's going to be very difficult.
So as a part of exploration, I'm attending this. So as a part of the strategy. Good. Thank you.
Yeah. Any more questions? In case you have any further, clarity required or additional information required, support required in terms of how you want to go ahead in your GBS journey, we'll be happy to have that conversation with anybody. Yeah. Thank you so much.